just
All right,
gonna
there he is. Yeah, we have some time, Jennifer. So I'm glad
Okay,
we got
great.
some time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All my
Rex.
sexual problems have been solved.
Just
Oh, I
like
was
Great.
hoping you'd say that, Rex.
Ready for better sex now. I've found my a better way to improve my ability to be intimate.
Mm.
No, I loved everything you said. It was really good.
Mm.
I want to ask a couple questions. How with people who have trouble being intimate, it seems like it's kind of it's a trouble being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something like the partner can do with a person to help them be a little more vulnerable, or?
Well, I would say that there isn't, in the sense that as soon as we are trying to get someone to do anything, we will tend to be creating resistance in them because they can map our agenda, right? And sometimes when partners are trying to help their partner, they don't see that there is a way in which they're handling their own anxiety. It looks better than it is when they're trying to help. And it's often a way to manage their own anxiety of letting their spouse really have a choice and sorting out who they're going to be when their spouse may not deal with themselves or deal with the marriage. And so I work with a lot of couples where one partner is trying so hard to get the other one to look at themselves, be more honest, self-confront, whatever it is. But they don't maybe self-confront or self-reveal themselves as much as they think they do. And so, for example, rather than how can I make you feel safe to get you to look at yourself or deal with your sexuality, sometimes it's being more willing to be honest and say, it's very hard for me that you tend to resist this because I feel rejected in it. I feel, or I feel like you take advantage of the fact that I'm the higher desire person for connection. And so you can coast or whatever it is. And I don't mean be mean, but in some ways reveal your own vulnerability in it, because now that doesn't mean the other person's going to be like, oh, wow, well, that I didn't know that. And let me self-reveal right now. It doesn't mean that it's going to make that produce the end that you may want, but it's at least living more honestly yourself and letting your spouse have a real choice. And I think that's a hard thing to do. We want to be chosen, but we don't want our spouse to have a choice. And yeah.
Yes. Well, that's kind of the yin and yang thing you're talking about in a sense, which I thought was interesting because I heard something recently about how we are attracted to mystery.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And we like the consistent mystery.
Yes.
Where is it leading? Where is this going?
Yes.
The tension of that.
100%. Yes.
I agree.
Yep.
It sounds like really the biggest issue that people are running up against is the struggle with their own ego.
Yes, 100%.
Gosh, like how do you even?
Yeah.
How do you
do about that ego? Ego death. We all need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so hard because it's always there. You know, the ego's valuable. It's also what's helped us create capacity. It keeps us safe. So it has value, but it's often just needs to be in the car seat in the back and is getting out of the car seat and driving the car and driving it into the ditch. Okay. So I think it's getting more self-aware. Like, I don't think any of us grow entirely out of our self-protective impulses, but we often get much more able to track it and self-regulate and not let it run the show. But we need more self-honesty and more self-awareness to stay in the driver's, to have the soul be in the driver's seat, to have our stronger selves be in the driver's seat. So, you know, one of the things I sometimes use as a tool with couples is the Enneagram. don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but I really love that model for so many reasons, because it's so much about our inclination that's being defined is our ego defense. How do we deal? Like, we're all of the things that are in the Enneagram, but we have preferences. And what I love about it is, there's maturation within a disposition, and it comes through deeper integration, and it defines where is your pathway of disintegration, the ego, and what's your pathway of integration. And so just sometimes having that self-awareness, like, oh yeah, I can see how I do that when I'm under stress. This is where I tend to go. And what do I need? I need to track that in myself and not indulge it, because it feels so right in the moment. And yet it invites precisely the response in my spouse that I hate the most. That's what happens for all of us. We do exactly the thing that drives the thing. And then we're like, why do they do that? That is crazy. And we don't realize we're so much a part of their reactivity as we are a part of theirs. So the more we can see it and push ourselves into higher integration, people that are capable of intimacy are integrated. That's what it is. They're not imperfect. They're not, above the human condition. They're just more integrated, and they're more anchored within themselves. And so they're more able to really know and be known. And so often what the ego does is it gets fixated on everybody else or it goes into, I'm just a worthless person. There's a safety in that too, rather than, no, how do I need to push myself right now to deal with me? Because that's all I get.
So it's just being honest with yourself, the good,
Yes.
bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
This reminds me a little bit of Carl Jung's The Shadow Self.
Yes, exactly.
Just kind of looking at that part and saying, okay, well, these are some pieces of me, and I need to figure out what to do with them.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yes, we're all capable of evil. One of the things I grew up learning a lot, I don't even know why I did. I think it was studying Nazi Germany and so on. And I don't know. It seemed like I learned that maybe it was just learning to be a therapist and so on, but just this idea that we have to deal with the darker impulses of being human. And if we don't see it, and, the most evil people often are doing what they think is good, right? They've told themselves a story, or they've been told a story that they believe that is, this dark thing is in fact good. And whenever we scapegoat or vilify, we're telling ourselves a story that I'm good and you are not good. You don't know how to love. I do know how to love. And that's this deep self-deception. Sometimes we say, like, evil is in sexuality. No, evil is in self-deception. Mm-hmm. It's not seeing ourselves truthfully. And so we have to be more able to recognize the darker impulse of being human, because we're all capable of good and evil. Humans aren't inherently good. We're not inherently bad. We're both. And if we don't keep track of our darker selves, they will take over and ruin our lives and other people's lives. And the more we can see, like, okay, yes, one of these commitments I made to myself when I was younger that I'm really grateful I made this commitment, because I think it made a big difference, is just the commitment to being honest with myself and admitting to myself when I had darker impulses. I remember wishing somebody would be hit by a bus. I'm not proud of that. But I just remember having that moment. Sure. And there were some understandable reasons why I thought life would be better if that person ceased to exist. And so rather than shaming myself and saying, like, I shouldn't think that, or indulging it and saying, yeah, I hope 4 buses get her, or whatever. It was,
let me double down on this.
Yeah, exactly. More just like, okay, like, I understand why I feel that way. I understand the impulse. I understand this part of me that is actually sort of trying to protect someone else that I thought was being harmed by this person. And, like, I understand it, but I don't know. It's just like using the moment of my dark impulse to better understand myself and to choose better, but not shame it. Just say, like, okay, of course, like, it's an understandable thing to have these kinds of feelings as human beings, but what am I going to choose in the face of those feelings?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people don't process their feelings. Like, I mean, I know growing up, I didn't. I just have feelings. Blah. Here we go. And then getting older and being like, why do I have this feeling? And what is it leading me to do? And
good.
Maybe it's okay to have the feeling, but not to
exactly
act down on it.
Right. So often we either suppress them or we indulge them rather than learning from them. And some people make feelings primary in therapy and so on. And I think they're more secondary. They're good indicators of the meanings we're creating, but we shouldn't be afraid of feelings. We just need to understand them and use them to get clearer so that we can choose well, choose wisely.
It's like a crying baby,
Yes.
Don't ignore
exactly.
it. It's crying for a reason.
Yes.
It needs something.
Exactly.
Figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
On the flip side of that, Jennifer, real quick, I hear sometimes people saying, I don't feel like having sex, and then I heard a guy, well, I don't feel like going to work, or I don't feel like doing the dishes. I don't feel.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, I agree with that. I do. So on the one hand, I'm not saying like ignore what's happening and just have sex because he has needs. So I would never say that. But I agree with that. On the one hand, okay, well, I may not feel like it right now, but I'm committed to a good marriage. So you want to go back to what are my commitments? What do I stand for? What is it that I want to create in my life or in my marriage? And so I may not feel like it, but what's that about? Is it just that I can just commit my energy and sort of like say like, maybe start touching me, see what's happening. Like I can commit to a process. Or is there something that's actually going on that genuinely needs to be addressed so that I feel like it more, but you're not using it as the measure and the indicator of what you're using it as, okay, well, what can I take from that? Is there something that I need to address or is there just something that like, oh, well, I could probably get there though, if I wanted to. So I agree with that. I don't think we should use feelings as the measure of life, although they deserve being understood enough to know how to act, to live up to our highest selves.
I would think to do that, you'd have to, and I'm totally endorsing this, what I'm about to say, you have to admit that there's something greater than yourself, that your commitment to your spouse is really a commitment to something greater than yourself.
Yes. And I wouldn't even say it's a commitment to your spouse. I would say it's a commitment to so sometimes I challenge the way we tend to think about marriage. I don't think of marriage as a commitment to another person. I see it as a commitment to God or to our higher selves about the kind of person we're going to be vis-a-vis the partner. So that's different because that's like, look, I promised God or my higher self that I'm going to love this person, even when he's driving me a little bit crazy. Okay. So, and then I'm committed to an intimate marriage. And so I don't feel like it right now. Okay. Well, all right. I don't have to feel like it. But what does that mean relative to the commitment I've made about the kind of person I'm going to be? So it's not that I'm submitting to his desires. I'm submitting to my conscience, to my higher self about what does this feeling mean relative to the person I'm committed to being here? Because when we get it into, I've made it, we feel like we're giving ourselves away and we never want to do that. Like, I don't care how much you love. Nobody wants to lose themselves literally. Okay. But I am willing to lose the self-serving part of me, the part of me that lives in a lesser way. I'm going to lose it to the higher part of me, the part that I respect more, because that's the way you get both. By living up to my highest self, I both love you more and respect myself more. You get both. But it's not about, oh, I'll do what you want to make you happy. That tends to create resentment.
Mm-hmm. Backfires always.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I love the way you put that. That's great.
But it reminds me of a book I recently read called A Guide to Sex in the 21st Century by Louise Perry. And she said this thing in there that I really liked, but it's something in our culture is so saturated with this idea that freedom, our personal freedom is the preeminent virtue above everything else.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the battle there too, when you're like,
no, I agree. That's ridiculous.
I need to be, there is something greater than me, God.
Yes, exactly. And look, so growing up in a conservative faith, a lot of people feel like I've been so constricted by it. And I understand. And it depends a lot on how a family relates to it too, because we can relate to expectations in a soul crushing way. We really can, like shaming and fear. But on the other hand, there's another kind of hell, which is like no standards, no expectations. It's all about freedom. And, that's the fast path to hell, a psychological hell too, is to have no expectations, no constriction, no demands placed on you, because so much of what it is to create freedom as an adult is to have capacity. So that's, how do I have expectations of myself that don't deny who I am as a human being, but also push the higher part of me to emerge? Because that's what creates real freedom, real capacity for love and being loved, for intimacy, for being known and knowing another. And that's where we find joy, is when we've forged capacity. And so there's always this balance between justice and mercy, between what the expectations are and a certain amount of flexibility and compassion. The best parents are authoritative, not authoritarian, which is all demand and shame, or laissez-faire, which is like the what do you call those? The permissive parenting also create a lot of trouble in their children. Authoritative are invested, and they have expectations, but there's also flexibility based on who the child is. And so authoritative is what the soul needs, is yes, I have expectations, and also compassion for being human. And that duality is the driving alchemy.
It recognizes the free will. We all have autonomy. But yeah, freedom can lead going off the rails, because everybody, if you go completely free, so to say, you're going to be a slave to all your vices.
100%. Yeah. And who trusts that person? Who wants to open themselves up to that person? Yeah, I just live indulgently. Want to marry me? It's like, no, are you kidding? No.
Oh, man. This has been awesome, Jennifer. Thanks for coming on. I've talked for forever.
Enjoy the book signing, Jennifer.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's really fun to talk to all of you.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.